Alright, welcome back to another mock draft here. I know I just released one not too long ago. Um, but that was before the final order was set. So actually it's been about a week, now that I think about it. So I thought why not just do another one right before the wild card round two. Also before some uh, head coaches get decided. Um, so let's go ahead and start. And I am using Mock Draft Database Simulator. Honestly, I just don't like PFF. I used it for my first video just to. I feel like it looks more professional, but honestly, this one just works better. It also has free trades, so going down when we get closer to draft time, I want to be able to do trades, and I'm not paying for PFF. So also, I think this one, the board is I think more accurate in my opinion. I just think PFF still has Derek Harmon all the way down here in like the 60s. Derek Harmon's probably going to be a first round pick, so I just think this one's more accurate. Well, let's go ahead and get right into it. And I do have a reference to my left, not that you can see me, but so I do have a little bit of a guide. I completely went off riff last time, but this time I have a guide to kind of help me stay on track. I don't want to come up with 45-minute videos every time. So let's go and try to get right into this. And we're going to start with Shedeur Sanders here at 1 to Tennessee Titans. Look, I will say this. I think I'm going to say this every video. Does Sanders deserve to be the first pick? No. Is he going to be? Yes. That's just the way the draft works. This isn't... if this was a who's the best player contest, you'd see Travis Hunter go off the board. Probably then Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, Will Johnson, Will Campbell. I mean, that's how it would go if it was about best players. And then you'd have Malachi Starks, Ashton Jeanty, Jalen Walker, right? That's not how the draft works. The draft is about positional value and about potential, right? Those are the two things that the NFL teams highly value. A guy like Cam Ward does not deserve to go at number 2, I think inherently. But because of the fact that he has such a high ceiling and he's young, well, younger, right? He's been in school for a while, but that is why he's going to be going, not to spoil the next pick, but he's going to be going at 2, right? Anyways, just kind of wanted to get that out of the way. I don't like Shedeur Sanders as a prospect. Obviously, as a person, I don't know Shedeur. But as a prospect, I don't love him. I think he has a very low ceiling. Now, I could be completely proven wrong here in 2 years. But I just don't think he has a very high ceiling, which is what we see players thrive off of. So this worries me, but I think the name, his dad pushing him and everything, it's just going to push him to 1, I think. I mean, that's just kind of how we see the draft go. So, yeah, I just think this is going to be the pick. I also I think it is going to be Shedeur over Cam Ward, and here's the reason why. I think Brian Callahan's going to really like Shedeur Sanders for 2 reasons. One, he has a high floor. So he might have a low ceiling, but he has a high floor. And for a guy like Brian Callahan that's on the hot seat next year, he's going to want wins. And a guy with a high floor can bring you that. There's no reason to bring in a developmental quarterback who you're probably not even going to see develop because you're going to get fired. So, yeah, I think that's why Shedeur goes over Cam Ward here at number 1. Now, if we were talking about a team like the Browns or it's just the Raiders, right? Because if the Raiders were here with everyone being gone now, Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco, right, you would be able to develop your guy. So, because you have Brian Callen on the hot seat now, Ryan Carthon is gone. So, that's kind of interesting because the GM does make the pick at the end of the day. But I think it's going to be a guy that works in Brian Callahan's system. He's going to see a little bit of Burrow there. Not that Sanders is anywhere close to Burrow as a prospect, or I think will be as an NFL player. But similar as an accurate and can make plays in the pocket, although Sanders just holds on to the ball too long. And again, I have my personal worries about him, but I'm not an NFL GM. So, and as I alluded to earlier, Cam Ward is going to go here too. I mean, look, they need a quarterback, right? And I know you still have Deshaun Watson. I know you can bring in Kirk Cousins, but why would you bring in a guy like Kirk Cousins who you know isn't going to do anything for you, when you can bring in a guy with a high ceiling. And look at a guy like, let me think here. I'm just thinking to the quarterbacks maybe last year, for example. Let's look at a guy like, say, Jaden Daniels. I think he got with it so fast in the NFL that I think maybe you hope, hey, maybe Cam Ward can do the same if we end up benching Deshaun Watson for him. Because I think at the end of the day, Deshaun Watson is going to be starting for the Browns at the beginning of next season. As a Bengals fan, I love to hear those words come out of my mouth, but I just do think so. I don't think Deshaun Watson is a backup that you're paying $235 million to. So you probably start him, and then as the play inevitably falls off, you bench him for Cam Ward. I think that's kind of the thought process going into picking him here at number 2. Giants here at 3. It's not, again, there's just no thought into this. I mean, this is the best player in the draft when it comes to skill position. Now, personally, I'm the kind of guy who would like to draft through the trenches if I was a GM. So for me, if I'm the Giants here, I'm looking at Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks, Mason Graham, Abdul Carter. But I don't think a team like the Giants is going to do that. I think they're going to look at what's their biggest need, corner, right? This team needs a corner badly. Deonte Banks has not really worked out how you'd like him to. They do have a very solid slot corner, but you just don't have anyone else besides that. So I just think you have to go out and get a guy who can play on the boundary. And look, at the end of the day, the team decides what you play, right? You can get drafted as an offensive tackle, let's say like Will Campbell here, right? He plays tackle at LSU. Whatever team he gets drafted to because of his arm size, he's going to get told you're playing guard. And he's not going to be able to do anything about it. Travis Hunter might want to play wide receiver because of the money. He's going to play corner. And the reason why is because he's a far better corner prospect than he is a wide receiver prospect. Teams are going to want him to play corner. Now, I think there are going to be some packages where he's a wide receiver. I could see him being around a 20 to 25 reception per year guy, right? Where you run a package where he's out there, but I just don't think he's going to be playing receiver. Now, I could be proven wrong, and maybe he has enough power because he's getting chosen so high to be like, no, I want to play receiver. Maybe that happens. He threatens to hold out all that. But I don't know. The kind of guy that Travis Hunter is, he's a really good guy. I just see him, you're going to play corner. Yes, coach. So that's kind of what I see there. With New England Patriots here at number 4. Now, this was easy when I did my first one because it's Travis Hunter, no question. Now it gets interesting because sure, you can take Will Johnson here, but you have Christian Gonzalez. I know outside of that you don't really have anything, but Tetairoa McMillan is very tempting here. And if it wasn't for the recent developments, I would take Tetairoa McMillan here because you need to give Drake May a receiver. However, it is looking more and more likely, and I'm assuming, now I am making this on the 9th of January, on, I believe it's Thursday. So the Patriots still don't have a coach, but if I had to bet, I would say within the next 2 to 3 days, Mike Vrabel will be their coach. I don't think that's going to shock anyone. I also don't think, this might be a hot take, but I just don't think it's the right choice. I think he's definitely better than Gerard Mayo. And just to kind of give some insight into what I think about the Gerard Mayo situation, I'm really, I don't want to say proud, because, they don't care what a kid in Arizona thinks. But, look, I think that was the right move. A lot of people saying, Gerard Mayo couldn't have won with that roster. Well, yeah, but it's just he looked lost out there on the sidelines. Horrible clock management. Did not look like he could get those guys going. He looked clueless on the sideline. He just looked lost. He did not look like a head coach. And Robert Kraft even said himself, he wasn't ready to be a coach, and he kind of hand-selected him before he should have been. We're talking about a guy who went from the linebackers coach to a head coach. That's a huge difference. He wasn't ready yet. I don't think he was going to get any better. So I think it was better to move on sooner than later, and especially when you got a guy like Mike Vrabel that wants to go to you. Mike Vrabel is a clear upgrade over Gerard Mayo. However, I think Ben Johnson would just be better for Drake May. But I still think Mike Vrabel is going to be solid. And you also know what you're getting out of Mike Vrabel, right? Ben Johnson hasn't been a coach yet. Mike Vrabel has, won Coach of the Year, all that. He was kind of dealt a bad hand there in Tennessee. And I did agree with him getting fired at the time because, I just thought it was time for Tennessee to move on. I don't think Vrabel's a bad coach though at all. That being said, all that, you know, it's starting to become a habit here of short story long. But look, Vrabel's a trenches guy. He's a defensive-minded head coach. I think all that said, I just think we're gonna see a defensive player in the trenches, and that takes it down to Mason Graham or Abdul Carter. Now, in my reference here, I'm already going off my reference, I had Will Campbell, but I'm just not going to do that anymore because I think Vrabel's going to want that guy in the trenches that he wants. He had a guy like Jeffrey Simmons. So do you go Mason Graham? Not that they're the same exact player. I think Mason Graham is probably a better player than Abdul Carter, but barely. But I think because edge is more valuable, I think we're going to see the Patriots take Abdul Carter. Look, yes, Keon White's been great this year, but why not give him more? And if you can get a dominant edge rush off the edge, both sides, that is, I mean, that's what decides a game, right? If you can pressure the quarterback on both sides of the defensive line, that's huge, right? As opposed to you got him on the edge on one side and then the interior, you can have a rollout to the right or the left. When you pressure him from the edge, it's harder for quarterbacks to have to improvise down the interior of the offensive line rather than rolling out to the right or left. Now, elite quarterbacks have no problem doing that within the middle of the offensive line. Look at Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, right? These guys, Lamar Jackson, they're able to easily navigate the middle of the offensive line. You look at guys like, let's say Trevor Lawrence, for example. A guy like him would panic and just kind of take a sack, right? But he'd rather roll out to the right than have to run through the middle. Anyways, I'm kind of making no sense here, but if you understand what I'm saying, basically it's more valuable to have two guys on the edge than it is to have a guy on the edge in the interior. I need to stop over-explaining. Okay. Anyways, I'm just going to move on to Jacksonville here at 5 because I sound like an idiot. This one's easy. Will Johnson is going to be the pick here. I think almost guaranteed. Unless New England surprises just about everyone and takes Will Johnson at 4, I think we're going to see Jacksonville take him here at 5. Now, this is definitely a trade down spot. And I definitely think down the road I will experiment with Jacksonville trading down. I think if they could accumulate some draft capital, that'd be great. Not that Trent Baalke will use it very well. But anyways, sorry, I had to drink some water there. Alright, yeah, Will Johnson the pick here. I don't think I have to really do too much. He's big, he's physical. There's different types of corners, right? Corner isn't just this one-size-fit-all. There's a lot of different corners out there. Look at last year. You had a guy like Terran Arnold, who's instinctive, right? But then you had a guy like Quinion Mitchell that was big, long, also instinctive, but he's just strong. Will Johnson, I would say, is very comparable to Quinion Mitchell. Big, strong. This is a guy that I think Trent Baalke is actually going to really like. And with a team that needs another corner, because you can't just keep throwing Tyson Campbell out there and I don't even know who else. This is your CB2, probably CB1 by the end of the year. Pretty easy pick there for Trent Baalke. Let's go to move on here to pick 6, Las Vegas Raiders. This is interesting because, look, there's not a quarterback here that's worth taking. Now, this number here might say 19, and you think, well, pick 6, you know, okay. Well, when it comes to the draft, this number right here doesn't matter, right? It's about what you see on film. At the end of the day, the rankings are usually pretty accurate, but a guy like Jalen Milroe at 19, probably not very accurate. I don't think he's going to go in the first round. I'd be shocked if he went in the first round, but I also didn't expect Michael Penix to go in the first round last year, and he did. So, although I will proudly say I did have Bo Nix going to the Broncos. Although I did have the Broncos trading down. But anyways, so you're not taking a quarterback here, right? There's not a quarterback worth taking here. Now, if Drew Aller, if Penn State wins another playoff game, right, which I think that's tomorrow or on Saturday, I don't really know. But that would be huge because I could see him declaring for the draft. Even though he said he's going back, I could see him declaring for the draft because his draft capital is probably going to shoot up after winning another playoff game. Especially if somehow Penn State wins the national championship. That would be huge for him. So, all that to say, if Drew Aller does end up coming back in the draft, I could see him going here, but maybe even then, you just go, look, you have a new GM and a new coach. This staff is going to be ready to build for the future. They're not going to be worried about winning now because they know their jobs are more than likely safe for next year. I think the reason why Mark Davis was so quick to fire Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco this year was just because Antonio Pierce was a returning interim coach, right? I think there was already not very... his leash wasn't very long already. Tom Telesco, kind of the same thing. He didn't work out in LA. They fired him for a reason. I think he was more of a let's see what you do. And honestly, I mean, the first 3 picks really weren't bad, but he still went. And anyways, you're going to see new staff that are ready to build towards the future. And I think if you're wanting to build towards the future here at the Raiders, you're going to go, okay, next year, more than likely, we're going to be selecting a quarterback. We're going to want to give him a weapon. Tetairoa McMillan is your weapon. This is a guy who can go down the field. He can jump up. He can grab any ball. He's not like, you know, let's say last year, like Marvin Harrison Jr. levels of, you know, it's like a 70-30 ball. But McMillan's a really good jump ball guy. I like to compare him to T. Higgins. I think they're actually really similar. But I would say as a prospect, probably like Drake London is more what you're wanting to think. But I think as a player, he'll translate similarly as T. Higgins did. So that's my pick here, Tetairoa McMillan. Number 7 here, we got the Jets. It would be easy to just go Mason Graham and call it a day. But let's think about a few things here. Do you want a new receiver? Devontae Adams, more than likely gone. Probably just going to end up cutting him. I would doubt they're able to trade him. But then you also have Luther Burden, who can replace him. And on the other end of things, look, Garrett Wilson's looking like he might demand a trade. Now, the report is if Aaron Rodgers remains a quarterback, he probably won't. But does he end up just demanding a trade anyways? And also, if he's already demanding a trade, by the time his contract's up, do you think he's going to re-sign? Honestly, I don't. So I think you could go Luther Burden here and secure your receiver position of the future. However, Mason Graham's here. Joe Douglas is out. You're going to have a new GM who knows he's safe for at least 3 years, probably, give or take, unless he's god-awful. And I think you're going to sit here and think, look, we have a generational, not generational, but a very high-level prospect here in Mason Graham. I would say one of the blue-chip talents in this class. I think you just send in the card and don't overthink it a whole lot. I know I just did, but I'm just throwing some possibilities out there. Because, look, it's pretty realistic that the Jets go, hey, we want to take Luther Burden here to cover our receiver position for the future. Or one of the tackles, probably Kelvin Banks, to actually play him a tackle. To secure, you know, the offensive line for the future or the receiver position for the future, depending on who you take. But I just think Mason Graham, he's too good of a prospect to give up. And so I just think you got to send him the card there and not really overthink it. Carolina, look, I've actually never done this before because I've never had Abdul Carter going this high, but I just think he's going to go as high as I had him going. So that being said, I think Mikael Williams is going to be the pick here. Mikael Williams. There we go. I think Mikael Williams is going to be the pick here for the Carolina Panthers. I mean, look, you need edge desperately. Jadeveon Clowney should not be your best edge rusher when he's 34 years old. That can't be happening. You got to get younger. Mikael Williams has a huge upside. He's not, I would say, James Pierce Jr. is a better player as of right now, but who has the higher ceiling? Definitely Mikael Williams. Think like Shedeur and Cam. Except when you're a little more down the board here, I think you're willing to draft a little bit more on upside rather than just pure talent. Speaking of which, I'm going to have James Pierce Jr. going here to the New Orleans Saints. This isn't really their kind of pick. They like the big, physical, athletic guys. But I just think, do you reach? And in my opinion, it wouldn't be a reach at this point for Nick Scorton, who I would argue is a little more athletic than James Pierce Jr. I don't think you do. I think you just say, hey, look, James Pierce Jr. is the better player. Let's just take him. Let's get better at the edge position. So that's what I have them doing. And here, this is interesting because the Bears now have a choice. They have a choice at offensive lineman. There's not been a single tackle taken at this point. Who do you take? And look, I think for the Bears, you look at your offensive line. Braxton Jones, he's okay. You don't know what his future is with the team, but he's okay. Darnell Wright's actually played pretty solid this year, as I talked about in my last mock draft. He's actually played pretty good this year. It's just been overshadowed by the overall horrible performance by that offensive line. So if I'm the Bears here, and this isn't a what I would do draft, I am doing a predict a pick here, if that wasn't obvious. If this was me, I would go Will Campbell, and I'm also just going to have him going Will Campbell, because I think Will Campbell's a guard. I know. He's going to be a guard in the NFL. I would be shocked if a team puts him at tackle, although teams have done that before, but I just think he's the short arms. Now, unless he measures longer at the combine than everyone thinks, that changes things, but I don't think he will. So that does put him at being a guard in the NFL. That being said, I think you just need to upgrade that offensive line if you're Chicago. Give the defense another guy on the offensive line to think about. If all they're thinking about is Darnell Wright, they're going to be able to just clear through everyone else, and you're kind of screwed. I think Will Campbell gives Caleb Williams just a little bit more time in the pocket. 2 good offensive linemen is a lot better than just one. Makes a huge difference. All right. Pick 11 here, San Francisco 49ers. Yeah, what a year it's been for the 49ers, right? What a mess. And look, this is usually where I'd go Nick Scorton, send the card, don't even think about it. But Kelvin Banks is still here. And I think they just need to get more physical in the trenches in general. Doesn't really matter which side. And I think Kelvin Banks is a better prospect than Nick Scorton is. They play different positions, so it's hard to just line them up. You know, what's better, an apple or a banana? You know, they're just so different. But I think you take Kelvin Banks here. I think you need to give Brock Purdy something there. The offensive line has just not been great this year. Outside of Trent Williams, like I've talked about before, when he's played, and Dominic Pooney, there's just been no one there. And I forgot his name, but the right tackle's a free agent. They probably end up re-signing him, is my guess. But if you don't, take Kelvin Banks here. And I think he's the kind of guy you can plug and play. You don't need to develop him. He's not a developmental tackle at all. You can plug and play him. He might take a little bit to get in there, but once he's in, I think he'll be a really good, solid NFL tackle. Dallas Cowboys here at 12. At some point, I will start switching this up, but as of now, it's a predictive pick. I'm not doing anything special here. It's going to be Ashton Jeanty. Look, Rico Dowdle's a free agent. Even if you do resign him, who cares? He's 26. He's at the end of his career for a running back. Running backs last until they're about 28, right? Guys like Derrick Henry, they're the outlier. They're not the standard, right? Look at a guy like Dalvin Cook. He's not that old, but because he's a running back, the longevity is just so much shorter. Pick up a guy like Ashton Jeanty, you get younger at the position. I think you just get better at the position. And the Cowboys have an okay offensive line, although it is just starting to get worse and worse as the years go on. So that might affect how Jeanty plays, but I think he has a solid enough line there to produce. Definitely will be better than Rico Dowdle. And this isn't, I'm not trying to just sit here and, just kind of throw Rico Dowdle under the bus. I'm trying to think of a way to say that without cussing. But Ashton Jeanty's just a better player. Miami Dolphins here at 13. And, I'm just looking at, I'm already going so far off my thing here, I'm not even going to look at it anymore. Look, I did have him going Malachi Starks here. I still might have him go Malachi Starks, but Josh Simmons is just really tempting here. It's risky taking a guy who just got injured this high, especially when you do need safety, considering Javon Holland is a free agent. But, hear me out, Josh Simmons would have been a top 5 pick probably in this draft had he not gotten hurt. So do you go off that upside? He was playing amazing. He was easily going to be the best tackle in this class before he got hurt. Do you go based off of the beginning of the season and hope that continues on? He'll be ready to go by rookie minicamp. But do you think the play is going to fall off after the injury? I don't know. Something to think about. You could go Ariante Ursary, but I think that's way too early for him. Same thing with, and I can say it now, Jonah Safat-Inaya. Right after I uploaded the last video, I did go to the website just to refresh my memory. I swear I knew how to say it. I really did. And it's sad that I go to Arizona and I couldn't remember how to say it for the video, but Jonah Safat-Inaya is how you say his name. Too early for him. Anyways, I'm starting to ramble. So what do? Well, Tyreek Hill's unhappy. Do you go Luther Burden? Probably not. It's looking like Tyreek Hill's gonna actually end up staying. That whole thing was just kind of bizarre. Anyways, I did a whole lot of talking just to do what I'm gonna do anyways. Malachi Starks, Javon Holland. I think you just let him go. Sorry, Javon Holland. Is that how you say it? I'm really bad with pronunciation, if you can't tell. I think you just let him go and you take Malachi Starks. You get cheaper, right? You're gonna have to pay Javon Holland. You just pick up Malachi Starks. Boom, there you go. You replace him. It's not as simple as just that, right? This could very well end up being an offensive lineman, especially if Josh Simmons tests well to combine. The physicals go through. I could see him. He's gonna shoot up on draft boards, and if he is here, I think the Dolphins end up taking him. But as of right now, I'm just gonna have him go Malachi Starks. Look, I've seen a lot of people just talk about this down year that Malachi Starks has had, and I think it's a little bit of an overreaction. You saw the play last year, how amazing it was. This year, he's been playing a little injured, from what I know. Also, on top of that, offenses are thinking solely about him, really, for the most part, when it comes to the secondary. Yeah, the play's going to naturally drop off, but I don't think that doesn't mean the talent's not there. I still think he's a top prospect. Alright, here we got the Indianapolis Colts. Honestly, if there was a high-end corner prospect here, I do think that would be the pick. There's not. I also think they could go Nick Scorton here. I mean, Chris Ballard loves his physical guys. And Nick Scorton isn't anything like Mikael Williams, but he's still pretty, he's got the tools. He's toolsy. But I think it just depends on what your outlook on. If you're the Colts front office, what are you looking at Anthony Richardson as at this point? Are you looking at him as, look, we're going to get rid of this guy eventually, we just need to kind of get there when we get there? Or are you seriously still trying to develop him? If you're seriously still trying to develop him, the pick's Tyler Warren. You send it in, you don't think about it. You give Anthony Richardson a blanket, a safety blanket. Hey, if it isn't there, give it to Warren. Or do you say, we're not thinking about Anthony Richardson as a future at this point. We're going to go Nick Scorton and set our edge up. Give someone next to Laiatu Latu. I don't know. Because I don't know what the Colts front office is thinking at this point. So I really don't know. Although I do think Chris Ballard would love Jalen Walker. I did just think about that. However, I think I am just going to go look. Let's go with the assumption that they are still planning on Anthony Richardson being the future. Tyler Warren's the pick, right? I think you have a scenario where internally they know Anthony Richardson isn't the answer. They go Nick Scorton. But if, let's say, Anthony Richardson's still the guy, I think you send in the ticket for Tyler Warren. All right, Atlanta Falcons. It's going to be edge. Question is who? Do you take Jalen Walker? Do you take Nick Scorton? Now, I think a lot of people kind of get scared by this LB right here, right? Linebacker doesn't mean he's going to be Fred Warner, right? This is a guy who he's a pass rusher, right? He's a pass rusher. That's what he is. It's just he's too small to be a full-on pass rusher in the NFL. This is going to be an off-ball linebacker who rushes the passer. He's going to do a little bit of both because he can play off the ball. He's shown he can do that at Georgia, but he also can rush the passer. So this is a guy who's going to be doing both. That's really valuable. And if you're the Falcons, I know he hasn't been on your roster for a long time, but you're looking at the Matt Judon replacement, except more of a pass rusher probably than Judon. Is that what you look at him as? I don't know. But then do you go, okay, look, Nick Scorton, he's just the full-on pass rusher. Look, here's something I'm thinking about here. I think almost objectively Jalen Walker's the better prospect. You want to know who else was the better prospect when the Falcons were on the clock last year in the second round? Johnny Newton. Who did they go with? Ruka Rotoro. That hasn't really worked out, and I don't think they're going to stop picking like that. I think Jalen Walker's the better pick here, but I think they're just going to go Nick Scorton. Toolsy, not that Jalen Walker isn't, but pure edge rusher. I just see them kind of going down that similar route that they do with Johnny Newton and Ruka Rotoro. Here at 16, got the Cardinals. It's Jalen Walker. Send it in. Don't really think too hard about it. Sure, you can go interior defensive lineman, but Jalen Walker's still on the board. I don't know how I let him fall, but he is. You just take him. You don't think about it, and it sucks that the Bengals are next because I would love for them to get Jalen Walker. Even if he was here, that wouldn't be the pick, though. And here's why. Bengals fans, NFL fans, I am calling it now. Unless there is some sort of weird thing that happens at the combine, he tests horribly, whatever, or shoots up the board, this pick, I can almost guarantee you is going to be Shamar Stewart. I'm going to tell you why. Mike Brown loves physical guys. He loves toolsy guys. Look at Miles Murphy. Look at Amarius Mims, right? Dax Hill, when we picked him, he's a very toolsy, athletic guy. This is how the Bengals picked Jonah Williams. I'm just listing names. John Ross, right? To think that Mahomes was the next pick, man. But, I mean, yeah. This is how Mike Brown, I mean, you could say Duke Tobin. It's mostly Mike Brown. That's how they draft. And Shamar Stewart is a toolsy, athletic freak. Not really freak, but he's very athletic. I don't know why the database has him listed as defensive line. He's an edge rusher. He's going to play edge slash kind of like similar to Jalen Walker, who's sort of like a, think of him as a 3-4 outside linebacker sort of guy. That's what Shamar Stewart is. And that's why, yeah, I scrolled down a bunch to find him. He's not the most polished prospect. He has a lot of upside. That's how the Bengals draft. It's put them in a lot of horrible situations. It's given them a lot of horrible draft picks, but it's how they draft. All right. 18 here, Seattle. And this is easy for them. You take Josh Emmons. Look, you could go Jonas Savaiinaea here. I don't mind that. But I just think Josh Simmons, I mean, with how he played at the beginning of the year, he could be edge one. I really do think so. So I think that's what you end up going there. We have Houston here at 19. I feel like, by the way, I just don't need to talk about that much. He's a really great player. If he can get back to how he was playing at the beginning of the year, what a steal for Seattle that would be. And you don't have to play him at tackle either. You could move him to guard, although I think you would rather keep him at tackle. And obviously Charlie Cross is going to stay at tackle. I think you move the line around just to make sure he's playing at tackle. The Texans here, and look, I mean, there's so many things you can do here. You could upgrade that interior defensive line, and boy, do you need to get younger in the interior defensive line. Derek Harmon, very tempting. You need to give C.J. Stroud some actual time to throw the ball, but is there an offensive lineman worth taking here? Jonas Savaiinaea is here. Ariante Ursare. Alright, Cam Williams. But I think you go, look, there's an elite receiver and prospect here. We can worry about the offensive line in free agency. And by the way, the way I do these drafts is I'm going based off of the current roster, right? Free agency is going to happen. That's going to completely change how the draft goes. As of right now, what do you value more, the offensive line or the receiving position? What did the Houston Texans front office show this last offseason? And I wish I would have been on record, one of my biggest concerns about the Texans this year was the offensive line. And I hate to say it, I've been proven right. Outside of Laremy Tunsil, who still has had about 50 million false start penalties. Outside of Laremy Tunsil in play, it really has been terrible. But the Texans made sure that C.J. Stroud had Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and John Mechie. So I just think they very clearly value the skill positions more. I think they go Luther Burden here, which the Denver Broncos hate. However, Sean Payton, I think, likes Colston Loveland being here. He's going to love Colston Loveland being here. Think about it. A tight end that you can develop, who's toolsy, who's physical, who's athletic. Colston Loveland isn't your standard inline tight end, right? He's not going to be the best blocker. Similar to Brock Bowers in that way. I think Sean Payton's going to love it. Not that Colston Loveland's even close to Jimmy Graham as a player, but I think Sean Payton's going to love having his tight end, just that guy at tight end. I think Colston Loveland will go ahead and be that for him. Let's go ahead and get Tampa Bay here at pick 21. And, it would be edge rusher here, but there's just not an edge rusher worth taking here. So what do? I think you just go corner. I mean, look, the secondary's been decimated this year. You know, and Chavone Revel, I think he's just gonna be a fantastic player. I really do. And I just realized that they have Tampa Bay picking below Washington, so they have Washington winning the playoff game, which I don't think is going to happen. So I think in the real draft, if Washington loses, you would see Washington take Chavone Revel, which Dan Quinn would love. But here I'm going to have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking Chavone Revel. He's a great corner prospect. Again, not necessarily as a player, but similar to Quinyon Mitchell last year, right? Not a big school that everyone knows. Just watch the tape. He's legit. And now we have the Pittsburgh Steelers here, and I'm just going to keep going Emeka Egbuka. Look, I know the Steelers don't do this. They don't pick inside, they don't pick receivers in the first round. I know. However, you have to look at how the team fell off. Well, I'm going to give two things here. You got to look at how the team fell off after George Pickens was out. And then let's look at how they played against the Bengals. And when I say they, I mean George Pickens, right? You cannot have 6 targets, 1 reception for -1 yards. You can't have that. And so if George Pickens has an off day, what happens to the offense? You saw it against the Bengals. And I have a feeling we're going to see it against the Ravens. You need someone else besides George Pickens. George Pickens cannot be your entire offense. Emeka Egbuka gives you someone else on the other side of George Pickens. He can also play in the slot. It's very valuable. You can do both. Although I do think he's more of a slot receiver. And then here at the Rams pick, look, it's either offensive lineman or corner. I just have a feeling they're going to address the offensive line in the off-season. I mean, the free agency. This is the off-season. Anyways, I think they go Benjamin Morrison here. He's a great corner prospect now. It depends on how the physicals go. How bad was the injury? Are we going to know by this time? Yeah, but I don't know. Until we figure out how bad that injury is and what the repercussions would be, I just think the Rams taking him at 23 is a steal. Great player. Hopefully that injury really didn't derail him. What a great player. Green Bay Packers here at 24. So I think in my last one, I want to say I went Maxwell Harrison here. Or maybe that was at the Commanders pick. I'm not too sure. I want to go ahead and do something different here. I want to go Jahdae Barron. Look, I don't think he's going to go inside the first round, right? I don't. But I just want to throw the scenario out there because it's certainly possible. This is a great DB. I know I've made the comparison before, and I don't mean exactly as a player, but very similar to Brian Branch in the sense of this is a very talented DB, right? You draft him and you find him, right? You find where you're going to put him. You don't care. You just take him and you find somewhere for him. That is exactly how the Packers draft when they draft DB. They just take great defensive backs and they figure out where to put them. And that's a really good way to draft. The Lions obviously do the same thing, just not with DBs. They do it with just players in general. Chargers here at 25, and man, we've never really seen them picking this low or this high or low. Yeah. Look, Isaiah Bond, I just don't think he's going to be a first-round pick. I think he had a chance at the beginning of the year. His play, mostly on Quinn Ewers, but it just hasn't really lived up to that. And wow, what a corner duo they got in the 4th round last year. So corner's no longer a need for them. Good for the Chargers. I think, and there's no tight end worth taking here, which they would love to have. No receiver worth taking here, so what do you do? I really want to go Kenneth Grant. He's a Michigan guy. Jim Harbaugh's going to love it. They need an interior defensive lineman. They need to get younger at it. And this is what the Chargers do. They build through the trenches. But here's the thing. Jim Harbaugh loves running the ball. And I just don't think J.K. Dobbins is a great player. But not only is he getting older, the injury stuff just keeps putting him down. I do think Omarion Hampton. I'm really bad with name pronunciation. I can read it in my head, and then when I try to say it out loud, it just does not work. Omarion Hampton. I know that's not how you say it. Hampton. I know how to say his last name. Hampton, I do think is going to go over Caleb Johnson. I do think he's a better running back as well, prospect and just player. Although I could see Caleb Johnson going over him. especially to a front office that involves Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh's going to love how Caleb Johnson runs, but I just think that Hampton is the better player overall. And look, no one thought Jahmyr Gibbs was going to go at 12, yet he did. Right? Everyone thought the Chargers were going to take, well, not everyone, but most people thought the Chargers were going to take Malik Neighbors at pick 5. They didn't. You just never know. There is no, that can never happen. You never know in the draft. And look, I do think at the end of the day, if I had just a drastic situation, right, and I'm picking for my life here, I would take Kenneth Grant. But I think just to have a little bit of fun and just kind of throw, again, like the Jahdae Barron pick, just throw the idea out there, right? Amarian Hampton. That's how you say it. Amarian Hampton goes here at pick 25. Pick 26 here, Washington. What do you even do? I mean, seriously, like, what do you even do? You don't go defensive line here, I don't think, because you have Jonathan Allen and Johnny Newton and other pieces there. So I don't think that's what you end up doing here. Definitely could upgrade the offensive line. Receiver would be great, but there just isn't one worth taking here. I've been seeing a lot of hype around Ayomanor. I can't say his name. I never have been able to say his name. I've been seeing a lot of hype around him going inside the first round. I'm not sold on it yet. I need to wait a little bit to see. I think we're just going to go offensive line here, and I think I do think Ariante Ursery goes off the board before Cam Williams. I think Cam Williams is going to be a better tackle than him, but I just think as a prospect, he probably ends up going off the board first. And look, I just think, what else is Washington really going to do here? You could go Maxwell Harrison, and he's definitely deserving of going inside the first round. I just kind of did that to throw the idea out there. I don't think that actually ends up happening, although it definitely could. As the draft cycle gets closer, I could definitely see him starting to become a first-round prospect. But I don't want to just keep doing it because I think he can be. I only want to do it, that was just throwing the idea out there. Just like Amarian Hampton here, I don't think that's actually going to end up happening, but just throwing the idea out there. Baltimore here, and I do think this is like totally a Tyler Booker team. I don't know if anyone else feels the same way, but look, the Ravens are notorious for just letting good players come to them, and usually it ends up working out for position, but not really here. I don't think the Ravens are the type of team to take Cam Williams, although they did take Roger Rosengarten, so I don't know. And I could totally see them liking Josh Connerly. This could be one to look out for. Josh Connerly to the Ravens is definitely one to look out for. But I think the Ravens, again, notorious for letting good players just slip to them. Kenneth Grant's here. You just take him. You don't imagine Kenneth Grant next to Madubuike. What a duo, right? I don't know exactly if they run a 3-4 or 4-3. Either way, you just take him. You throw him out there somewhere. You find something to do with him. He's a great player. Again, I have talked about this in my last mock draft video. This isn't, again, a jab at him. How much of the production comes from the offensive lines giving attention to Mason Graham? I don't know. That's a totally open-ended question. How much? Is it minimal? Is it a lot? You see a lot of these, say, like great Clemson defensive lines that come out, and then you see that one guy is really great in the NFL and the rest just don't really work out. So maybe it's Kenneth Grant doing all the work and it's not Mason Graham, although we all know that's not the case because just watch Mason Graham play. Anyways, just kind of throwing that out there. I think some teams might be weary of that, how much of Kenneth Grant's production came from Mason Graham. I still think he's a great player and he's definitely deserving of a first-round pick. Vikings here, and I don't even need to think about this. Derek Harmon's still here, but I do think he's going to go off the board before Walter Nolan. Walter Nolan has high upside. He was the #1 recruit in the nation, depending on where you look. But the play's just not been there. He's jumped around to different schools, right? It just hasn't really come together. Derek Harmon's a great player, right? Obviously, Oregon just got embarrassed in the not the national championship in the playoffs, but it's not all in Derek Harmon, right? I also didn't watch that game, to be completely truthful. I was with family that day, and I just haven't gotten the chance to look at that. So I don't know how Derek Harmon played that day, but I'm sure he played great. And this is just a great player. I don't think one game, even if he did play poorly, I don't think that decides anything. So I'm going to have him go here to Minnesota, pick 28. Buffalo. And I think the choice has basically been made for you, right? You need defensive line. You need someone next to Ed Oliver. Take Walter Nolan. He's a big guy. He's just a space eater, right? You just send him at the line. They have to take care of him. They have to do something about him, and that gives Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau, and however long he's there, Von Miller. That gives them the opportunity to strike. So I think that's why they go and take Walter Nolan. He's an upgrade, no matter what. He's obviously not better than Ed Oliver. I don't think you expect him to be your DT1, but he's just going to be a great player. Philadelphia Eagles here, and it's just going to continue to be the same pick. But look, this is a Howie Roseman pick, 101. Cam Williams, big, athletic, physical, just big guy at offensive line. That's what Howie Roseman likes. Develop him behind Lane Johnson, and there's your Lane Johnson replacement for the future. Pretty easy pick here for the Eagles. KC, look, it's always going to be two picks for me here. It's either going to be tight end if one of the tight ends falls, but I don't think that's going to happen throughout the rest of the draft cycle. I'll probably have it happen maybe here and there, just kind of get interesting, or it's going to be offensive tackle. You got to move on from Jawan Taylor. I mean, this team is 15-2 with him even cost. I mean, look, half of them aren't called, but these false start penalties, they're ridiculous. Although they're lucky, it's just very convenient that they barely get called. But anyways, take your pick. Josh Connerly, Jonas Savati-Naya, Wyatt Millum. I've never had him go in the first round, so sure, I'll just go and take him here. He can go in the first round. I don't think he will. I think he's a very high-end round 2 prospect, but screw it. Let's just have something different here. And last pick here, Detroit Lions. I've said this a couple times. Players to look out for when the Lions pick here. Mike Green, Landon Jackson, Jack Sawyer, and I think Nick Amanwari is also someone to look out for just because he's a great player, and the Lions are known to just pick great players, although I don't think that one ends up happening. And the one that I'm going to end up going with here, Jihad Campbell. Jihad Campbell's a great player. He's so strong, big, physical. This is a great linebacker. And I mean, sure, you have Jack Campbell, but now you have Jihad Campbell next to Campbell. What a duo. And yeah, there we go. So I think Jihad Campbell would be a great fit there. Detroit, again, they have shown time and time again they don't care about positional value. They just pick the great players. Jihad Campbell's an amazing player. If it wasn't for positional value, he'd probably go somewhere around 15 to 22, just to give kind of a random range there. But because he's a linebacker, he falls. But again, the Lions, they don't care. They don't care about positional value. They say Jihad Campbell's a great player. We're going to take him. And that's just kind of how it goes when the Lions pick. But that's going to do it for today. Just wanted to get this out before the wild card starts and just kind of get some of these picks in. Just get a mock draft done. And look, I think this was probably my best one yet, I would say. I mean, yeah. And definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'd love to hear it, whether you agree with my picks or disagree with them. I'd love to hear it, seriously. I'm just curious what a lot of people think about what I have to say. And yeah, but that'll basically do it. And if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate a subscription, liking the video, just appreciate it. But yeah, have a great rest of your day / night whenever you're watching this, and see ya.